Joining me now, Pennsylvania Congressman on the Foreign Affairs, Judiciary and Armed Services Committee, Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, you initially voted no for this stimulus bump. Why, if you voted for big spending packages in the past?
Well, Dagan, just for that reason, and good morning, by the way. Thanks for having me on. And as always, Dagan, please just call me Guy. But you said it, that we voted for stimulus in the past. And let's just take a step back. Over the summer, we voted for literally trillions of dollars in relief. Additionally, just days before this requested bump to $2,000, we had passed a $900 billion COVID relief package, yet another package. And I don't want to begrudge anybody aid and relief, but if you look at that last package, it had $600 payments for stimulus. It also had an increase of unemployment compensation to $300 extra. Also, you had money for the very popular PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. You had a holistic bipartisan approach. We should take a wait and see approach to this, to the last stimulus, before we go and have another payment, another increase. Additionally, Dagan, at a certain point, we're going to have to pay off this debt. We're going to have to deal with the deficit. And if we weaken our economy, if we keep running these numbers up, it's going to mean increased taxes in the future. It's basically debt and deficit are basically a tax on future Americans, number one. Two, it's going to slow and weaken our recovery, which is going to make us weaker relative to a growing China GDP. So for all those reasons, I voted no. And Dagan, let me just say this. If we want to have the best stimulus possible for the American economy, it's ending these draconian shutdowns. Americans want to get back to work. We need to unleash the economy, and we can't do it with these irrational lockdowns that we're seeing from blue state governors. We can open the economy, we can socially distance, we can be responsible and still grow the GDP. Unfortunately, blue state governors have not given us the opportunity to do that.
Well, that's been Steve Forbes, get in here. This has been the tug of war all along, really, between the federal government and the state government. And it's the separation of those powers. But Steve, with Congressman Reschenthaler talking about the debt and our deficit, are we past the point of no return? That's my biggest concern. Is government has gotten so big that, and you have a Federal Reserve that is financing the debt, monetizing the debt, that we're already in this spiral where the economy will be held back, the private economy, rather.
Well, the danger with the Federal Reserve monetizing the debt the way it has, 57% of the stimulus spendings come by the Fed effectively printing money, is something that markets have completely overlooked, and that is the possibility of inflation in our future as these dollars start to circulate in the economy. And so that is a real threat. And the way you deal with a big national debt, we had a big one after World War II, is by reducing taxes, reducing regulations, as we did after World War II. And the economy came back, and the debt as a proportion of the economy went down through positive approaches, same way Reagan did it in the 1980s. But I'm wondering whether the Democrats are so desperate. You know, as we know, the Republicans made real gains in the House. I'm wondering, Congressman, there's been talk that the Democrats may try to expel 2 Republican members, one by 6 votes, another one, I think, by 30 or 40 votes. They were certified as winners. But as you may know from history, in 1985, the Democrats expelled a Republican winner in a district in Indiana and put in his opponent. Are they going to desperately try to do that again against those 2 members? Just say we don't accept the election and put in their opponents? There's talk of it.
Yes, Steve. And what's interesting about this is the Democrats are making motions to expel 2 members of Congress that were elected, and they want to do it in the body on the floor of the House. Contrast that with how President Trump is dealing with his own campaign and his own election, which is fighting out the process in the courts. It's amazing that the Democrats and mainstream media want to begrudge President Trump the ability to fight his election in the courts, yet they turn around and they're silent on the Democrat attempt to not litigate in the courts and yet just take the vote to the chamber, the House, and try to expel or not seat 2 duly elected members. It's amazing the contrast in the fact that the mainstream media doesn't pay attention to what the Democrats are doing to override the will of the people. They're simply focused on criticizing President Trump for fighting his election in the courts.
Well, and speaking of like radio silence from so many people or television silence, Congressman Eric Swalwell, House Republicans putting pressure on Speaker Nancy Pelosi over Swalwell's connections to a Chinese spy, Christine Fang, calling for his removal from the Intel Committee. Guy, is his presence on Intel and the Judiciary Committee considered, and do you think it's a national security threat? But do you think he stays put?
I think that Nancy Pelosi is very reluctant to remove Eric Swalwell from the Intel Committee. And let me just say this. You know, I don't place the blame on Eric Swalwell. I place the blame on Nancy Pelosi and Democrat leadership, and here's why. They knew that he was compromised, yet they failed to share that. They put him on the Intel Committee. And what else has Nancy Pelosi and Democrat leadership done that's soft on China? Well, they didn't put anybody on the China task force, which Kevin McCarthy, Leader McCarthy, set up to combat and deal with China moving forward. Why was that? You know, I often wonder what the CCP has on the Democrat Party, not seating people on this China task force, repeatedly being soft on China. This issue with Eric Swalwell, it really makes me wonder. And let me just say this, too. During Eric Swalwell's time on the Intel Committee, they were investigating impeachment. During that time, they turned a blind eye to the aggression that you saw coming from China. There was very little done with the aggression in the South China Sea. There was very little that was said about the Uyghur population being put in concentration camps. And it set the stage for China to violate international agreements and conquer Hong Kong, a city-state that is very tied in with the West. So we're going to see a lot of aggression from China. Will the Democrat Party continue to be soft?
And when they were impeaching President Trump, the Chinese virus was also spreading across the United States. There's that as well. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, thank you so much.